Hi, everybody. Welcome to our creative sustainability session with Seed&Spark. These are more or less weekly sessions that we've been hosting with some of the most generous and incredible creators out there. Today is absolutely no exception. And these sessions are really meant to help you forward your journey as a creator wherever you are, both geographically and metaphorically. I want to just extend the land acknowledgement and say that I'm joining from Nisenan territory up in Sacramento, California. And nativeland.ca is an incredible app you can use to find out where you're joining us from. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring up the most incredible Emily V. Gordon, who is a member of our Creative Action Board at Seed&Spark. She's an Oscar-nominated writer. She posts really amazing photos of her teenage self on her Instagram, which I think is its own art form personally. And I've really been enjoying, my mom especially too, has really been enjoying your podcast. Like she came in the other day and she's like, do you know about this couple that does this podcast, Emily and Camille? And I was like, in fact, I do. And she's been listening. I think, were you interviewed on Howard Stern?
No. Were we on Howard Stern?
They must have mentioned you because I think that's where she gets most of her pop culture info.
That's a shock. And I'll look into that later.
Great. But yeah, you've been producing amazing things out of quarantine and maintaining an amazing public face on what is, very much a stressful time for everyone. And when we talked about setting up this workshop, you were like, I'm not going to just do anything. I really want to think about what we have to say here. And then you brought in some incredible guests. And so getting to see what I got to see 5 minutes ago with the three of you in the tech check, I'm going to get the F out of the way and let you know.
We like to talk.
The audience is in for a huge treat, and I'll be back with about 20 minutes left in the session to start hosting some audience comments, but we'll be monitoring the live comments all along, and I'll see you in about 40 minutes.
Thank you, Emily.
All right.
And thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm very, very excited. When I was trying to think about what I wanted to do for this, I was a therapist before I was a writer. And so the title of this is What's Keeping You from Writing Today? Because not only do we need kind of help knowing how to write, tips and tricks, all that fun stuff, but also to kind of think about the reasons why we don't write emotionally when things are difficult, when things are going well, at any point in time. And as a therapist, I was always told that when you cannot talk about the thing, talk about why you can't talk about the thing. So if you can't write, let's then talk about why you can't write. So I'm hoping this is going to be kind of a little mental healthy, a little writing advice. And there are two women I'm friends with that I have spent a lot of time with both of them talking about the difficulties of the process, how hard it all is. I'm so happy they're able to join me. So I would like to welcome, and I don't know what order they're going to come up, Jen Richards and Naomi Ekperigin. Woo, beautiful.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Likewise.
And yeah, it is. You are two women that I have connected to quite a bit as writers, as creative people, of just like how difficult the process can be sometimes just because of the world, because of stuff that's going on with you, because of notes that you're getting. And so I thank you both for your ability to be vulnerable, both with me and hopefully with this group as well, because it's not easy.
I believe I called you crying a couple weeks ago about this very thing.
And I do feel like we're supposed to be, even if you're in a writer's room, great, but often it's a lonely process. And I often am like, oh, everybody else has got this figured out and I'm the one that's kind of not doing this well. So I've tried to get better about being like, I am freaked out and I don't know how to do this and I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm trying to get better about normalizing that. Yeah. So I kind of want to start with just a real basic, what is your writing process? Whatever that means to you, what is your writing process?
Jen, do you want to go
No,
first?
you first.
Well,
Yep.
okay, I'll tell you. Okay, first, there's an idea that excites me. and I'm like, ooh, maybe I can make this world a real world. Then I start to realize there's some holes in this. Then I say, forget it. Why bother? What's the point of any of it? That'll give you about 3 weeks. 3
that's
weeks
a good
worth
3
of
weeks.
darkness, you know? You go, why? And then if the idea really is something I like, right? Like it won't go away. It'll be kind of like a little earworm. And then I'll be like, but you can't do this. Who do you think you are? And then that feeling is like I just get so physically uncomfortable that I know the only way I'll feel better is if I just write something, anything. Then I just start to type literally anything, like kind of take the idea and almost try to do free writing and tell myself you only have to do it for 20 minutes. If you do it for 20 minutes, you can eat whatever you want afterward. And
Rewards.
then,
Rewards
you know what I
are
mean?
important.
Yes, and then that gets you going. And I find usually once I like say 20 minutes, I can usually get past that 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And actually it'll become an hour or something like that. And usually once I actually lock into the idea, the process of the words flowing doesn't take me time.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean it's all good, but I can like get out a trash draft pretty quickly once I kind of accept the call to be the slayer.
Accept the call. I think that's a very, very excellent way to put it. Because
To be the
sometimes
slayer.
you do not accept that call.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Jen.
I mean, I guess process so I was thinking about process differently. I think what you said is true for me as well. But like in terms of a daily practice, like a big part of my writing process, even though it isn't my professional writing, but just writing every day, I do morning pages and have been doing morning pages for years. So first thing in the morning, I get up, I make my tea, and I sit down and I write 3 pages longhand in a journal without editing, without looking back. Just to like kind of keep that channel open between whatever's up there and your head and your hand. And so that's a big part of my process. I do that every day, no matter what the circumstance. If I'm traveling, it's on the airplane. If it's at a hotel, I'm there. It's just, I have to do that every day as a touchstone. And a lot of my professional writing is informed by things that come out on the page. Like 90%, probably more than 90% of what's on my morning pages is just utter banal trash. You know, what I ate yesterday, why I was upset with someone, like what I saw on TV. It's just like meaningless. And then like 5 to 10% is I'll be stuck on something on a project and I'll just be writing it through on the page and I'll get the ideas that I need. Or I've had a dream or I have an idea and that's where I work out those ideas. So that's like a huge part of my writing process, even though it isn't always formally writing. In terms of what Naomi said, it's very similar. Just I use a program called Evernote for just kind of logging all my ideas and keeping them organized. And that's where anytime I have an idea, like, oh, maybe this could be something, I just have like a bulleted list and just put it in there. And at this point, there's probably 200 or 300 ideas in there that I've saved. And then every once in a while, when I need something, I'll go through and look at them and see what sticks, what resonates, what like can't get out of your head. And then I'll start to work it out in the same process, just kind of free writing, see where it goes, see if there's something there. Emily and I were just talking about this yesterday. Often something that seems like a really good idea at one phase will then completely collapse at another. It like might be a great pitch and then you get to like, no, but that doesn't actually work on the page. Like once you actually write, or it might work in the outline and then not in script. So just kind of playing with that constantly and just kind of letting it grow and evolve. And then there's a whole nother writing process for when you're actually, getting paid to write something and you're on deadline.
And I do think that's the thing for me. I have a couple of thoughts on everything that both of you said. One, I have a Google Doc that is like my Google Doc for every idea that I have. And it's got sections. And some of those sections include insults when I just come up like, I hope I can curse on this. I wrote down, what the cinnamon toast fuck is this? Somehow that feels like an insult. I'm not saying it's gold. It's got insults. It's got creepy moments. It's got moments from my actual life I'd want to put in something. It's got big ideas. It's got small ideas. And it's on my phone. It's on my computer. I just have it everywhere. Anytime I want to write it down.
Wait, what are the sections? Like you have like an insult
literal,
section?
I have an insult section. I have a literal, one of the sections is romantic things because I don't find a lot of things romantic. So if something strikes me as romantic, and then when you're trying to write that down, you're like, what am I? A guy holds your hand backwards? That's on there. A guy holds your hand backwards. What? I don't know what that is. But that doc has been really helpful because I find that stuff will distract me often from what I'm doing. I often find that, like you said, you think something is a great idea and then you start digging into it and you're like, this is nothing. I think a big mistake I've often made is I think something is an idea when it's really just a setting. When I'll be like, oh, this is a great idea. I worked in a home with people with schizophrenia for years, and I was like, oh, I should do something there. That's not a story. That's a setting for a story.
Yeah.
That you have to find the story of the person that's in that place. So I think sometimes that's a thing that's tripped me up. And Jen and I have talked about this. I'm just a big ritual person. I need to have a very specific ritual. I need office hours. And when I was working a full-time job before, like when I wasn't a full-time writer, I would have to find the time after work or before work, but I always had to have a corner, and the corner was like my writing corner. And my laptop would go there, and when I was in that corner, the only thing I could be doing was writing. It's like operant conditioning, which is that thing where like you ring the bell, feed the dog, and then the dog salivates, and then you ring the bell and the dog just salivates. Like you have to kind of I had to train myself that when I'm sitting at this laptop in this spot, it means I'm writing. And when I'm listening to this playlist, it means I'm writing. And nothing else can happen because it's not, I think I thought for a while that it was magic, and it's not magic. It's a job. It's a magic that you have to force. And that is, I think, the thing. I used to think like I have to sit and wait for some like inspiration to come down from up high, but that is not how it is. Like that is the case on occasion, and it's beautiful when that happens, but you still have to sit down every day and kind of, you have to learn to force the magic a little bit.
I mean, if you'll pardon the religious metaphor, I think of morning pages that way. Okay, I'm gonna do it anyways. I always thought of like your craft, like everything you learn about writing is kind of like building the church, and then your daily practice is showing up every day. So like for me, morning pages is coming and opening the church doors and dusting the pews and making sure everything is ready. It doesn't mean God shows up. God might only show up a couple times a year. But if I'm not there every day holding that space, I'm going to miss it when she does show up.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really lovely metaphor.
That's very nice.
Works for me.
I wish I had more of a structure. Like I try morning pages, and then Jen, you'll appreciate this. I like to trick myself by giving myself smaller books. If the book is an 8.5 by 11, that's 3 big pages. Give yourself a nice little notebook. I can write 3 little notebook pages. So again, I'll find anything to like avoid doing the thing. But I find it's not inspiration. It's more, I realize a big thing for me learning, like I need energy. And so there are other things that have to happen before I write. I realize like I'm a very bad sleeper, and it's a lot of brain power to, write and like make it anything that makes any sense. And so I realized I'm like, okay, if you want to write, you have to go to bed at a normal hour. You have to have just enough caffeine to wake you up, but not so much that you're anxious, and like get in that zone. And I realized there is such a balance, but I realized, I think it took me a while to figure out there are things I have to do before the writing even starts, right? Like certain basic take care of myself things in order to be able to show up for the page. And then also like I have to get in a certain headspace too, that where the real work for me is in turning off the critical voice so that I can continue to write. Because the problem is I'll start 2 sentences, and then if the voice says, what is this? Or you're stupid, or this makes no sense, I'm gonna stop. So then there has to be like another level of work in terms of, when you talk about a playlist or music, I can't listen to music with words, but I will put on like a meditation playlist that kind of calms the energy and just like says, it's not about what you think about any of this right now. It's just what you're doing. Like don't judge it, just do it. And then you can judge it later.
That's
and
really
you
good.
will judge it later. And you'll need to judge it later.
Many people will judge it later.
Yes. I learned a little kind of just in terms of ritualizing the space and time that you enter into writing, something from Gloria Calderon-Kellett and Tanya Sriracho, which kind of similar to what Emily's talking about, to like create a playlist. For me personally, I do like I'll write on a Post-it note what I want to accomplish that day. And in terms of, let this pilot be original and nuanced and say what I want to say, whatever. Like may my writing practice today be blessed, basically. And then I have an orange candle that I then put on top of it, and I light the candle and light incense, say a little prayer, and then set some kind of music that I like. And it's just it's a little witchy, but it's just a way of kind of consecrating the space, just saying, okay, for this time it's space now. Yeah.
I think from my playlist, I have a different one for every project I'm working on, and I can't do anything with lyrics either unless they're in like French. So I do like 60s French pop, which is a delight. A lot of bleep and bloop music that's just like machinery at the bottom of the ocean. That's kind of my jam. But and the hope is that if I do all of these things consistently, that's always going to trigger my brain. Like, this is when the work happens. Because I imagine a lot of people watching this are not full-time writers, but are aspiring to be full-time writers. And that meant that a lot of times I was putting that playlist on while I was working at a job and I wasn't supposed to be writing. And I would have the playlist going in my ear. It would mean that instead of going out some nights, I would be at home writing. It would mean that I was getting less sleep. I was sacrificing working out, which I probably shouldn't have done. But I was trying to find out what those trade-offs were for myself, because it is really hard to carve out the time, but you have to carve it out. And I think that's going to kind of get me into the next part, which is what are our excuses for not writing? And we're going to get to the current state of the world, which is a whole thing. But let me just see if any of these ring true for the two of you. I haven't done enough research yet.
Okay, yeah.
That's forever true. I will never have done enough research.
Yes, you have. That is the answer. It turns out the answer is always, yes, you have. And by the way, these are valid excuses for the most part. But I think also what I think is important for us is I think some of us, including myself, get caught up in, well, this is my reason I can't do it. Without ever, we kind of have to look at the eye and go, okay, now what? This is something. There's literally always going to be something that's going to hold you back from getting writing done. It doesn't matter what day it is. There will always be something. I haven't done enough research is a big one. You definitely have. I have to tell you. Do the research. You need to do the research, and the research can inspire you. But I think it's easy to get caught up, and especially if you were a good student, like I was kind of a good student.
Yeah. It has to be perfect, or don't bother.
Don't bother.
Yeah. It's like that's literally if we did that, white men wouldn't exist. You know what I mean? It's not about perfection. It's really not. In fact, the more mediocre, the better. So don't stress yourself.
Also, I have to fix this part before I can move on. That's a really big one for me. I can't, I have to, and then you end up having it where you go back over, for screenplays, you'll go back over the first 20 pages a billion times and never have an act 3. Not one time even think of having an act 3 written. That's a big one for me that I've been trying to avoid, because I kind of want to make sure I'm setting the table properly, but then I've just learned to open a document, put in make sure you're setting up that she's nervous. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just put that in the document, I'll handle that later, because if you don't get to the end of the thing, it's never a thing. And I think being afraid of ending the thing and being afraid of knowing how to end the thing is a big reason behind that excuse. But that is one that I use. Does that one work for you guys?
I don't do it anymore. Now, my big thing is if I don't know, I just go funny something here and then on to the next. Or I'll just literally write XYKL5 gibberish just to know, okay, hold that for something. Hold it for something brilliant. But you gotta keep plowing through. Yeah.
That is a hard one to do. I just wrote a scene recently where I hate the dialogue, but I needed to just get the dialogue on the page and move on to the next scene. And it's even though I know it's a placeholder and no one else is ever going to see that bad bit of dialogue, it still pains me to know it's there.
Know it exists.
It just exists. Yeah.
I will say also too, if you write with anyone, like your spouse, for instance, you'll find that they often do that when they send you drafts, and you're expected to clean up the stuff that they put in. Sometimes they'll even write, Emily will come up with something here. What? That's not okay.
Fem labor.
Wait, it's not okay? Okay, this is good to know. This is good to know, because I've definitely been relying on that.
I want to go back to something else Emily said about not always knowing the ending. That's a big thing for me. Just trusting the process. That I often think that I used to outline obsessively and try to know exactly everything that happens before I get on the page. And then what I discovered over time is that every time you get on the page, something different happens, unexpected. The characters take you in directions that you don't anticipate, and which is part of the thrill of writing. But that can become an excuse to never get to that point. It's like, well, I have to know exactly everything that happens. And you just got to jump in.
And also to not let go of that original ending, or not let go of something that like just doesn't fit into it anymore, but you came up with it a while ago and you thought it was so genius then that you're like, this is definitely needs to be. And it's like you end up like creating this whole like twisted castle around this one thing that's like way over here that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
I will board stuff out. I have a board. This is a board for a thing I'm doing now. So I'll do like a very basic board. But then when I look at it like a couple weeks later, I'm like, the fuck was I thinking when I did that board? It's amazing how that happens. Here's a big excuse. Oh, wait, now I've got an even better idea. And isn't that so much sexier and more fun to think about than this idea I'm currently working on?
I don't know that. I don't understand that. You have two ideas at once? You mean you got two concepts that you can build at the same time?
I think, and I know, Jen, I know you experience this too. I think it's like, it's the sexy neighbor that doesn't have the same issues as the person you're dating. Like, it's like, you know, like it's the fantasy of a new idea is so much more romantic and beautiful and exciting than the reality and the nuts and bolts of the idea that you're working on now.
Yeah.
Yes, but also when inspiration comes, you got to follow it. So if I do have a new, sexy neighbor, like I'm going to go see where that goes.
But do you find that sexy...
Let's stop the metaphor. I'm not comfortable with that.
Fair. That's fair. Completely fair.
If I get a new story idea, like if it's there, if there's energy behind it, like I feel like it's almost a spiritual thing. Like I have to like see that through. Not to the point like if I'm on deadline, I'm not going to do my other work, but I've got to at least develop it a little bit and see where it goes.
That's my issue, is that I often get that when I am on deadline. I will get a beautiful idea about something else and I'm like, oh God, I wish I could just work on this. It's so much better. And to me, that is my version of this is getting complicated. And when things get complicated and your brain starts to hurt, you'd rather think of the beautiful what ifs. I'm working on 2 screenplays right now, and one I'm on the second draft of, and the other one I'm just like outlining. And the outlining one is so much more fun to work on than the one that I'm like fixing problems and working through issues on, because it is, the relationship metaphor just works for me, so I'm going to go with it. It is like so much easier to be like, oh, that person seems amazing, and wow, they seem so fun and not complicated. Whereas I know this person's trash. Not that they are trash. I know they're
trash. Trash. You're really telling us a lot about your home life.
I'm like, do you want to talk about something else while we're here?
Vulnerable, even.
Amazing relationship, but I know all of my husband's ups and downs. I know every aspect of who he is. We've been together 13 years as of next week, and whereas the person over there, I don't know what their drama is. I don't know what their weird baggage is. So I think that's a really, not only could that idea be great, but let's also acknowledge like it's also great because it's not complicated yet. And like anything that you're working on gets complicated.
But I have a question for both of you then, because I know what you mean. And right now I'm dealing with a project and it's even just in the outline, like the pitch phase, where I'm trying to get into it, but like I'm stuck on something, like meaning I'm in this nuts and bolts and I don't know the answer. So I've literally put it aside for 3 weeks. Now, as we said, that kind of ties into, have I done enough research or like, I don't know if it's perfect yet. What do you do when you're at a point where, you've hit a bump and you're like, I don't know what comes next. Usually for me, that's in terms of like world building, not like what the character says. What do you do to get over it? I
let other people read it. That's what trust me, it's awful. But I'm like, I've gone as far as I can go right now. And if it's someone, it's got to be someone I trust. It's got to be, often it'll be someone I'm working with on the project, which is another like hard thing to do sometimes too. But being like, I'm stuck, like, tell me. And I find the other version of that is putting it away for a little bit and then taking it back out and reading it as if it's not yours. That's hard. It's like, it's a bit like masturbating with your hand asleep. Do you know what I mean? That old thing.
Okay,
like,
your metaphors today.
You should have seen me when I was a therapist. It was not great. But I do. It is that you try to read something as if you didn't write it, Like,
Yeah.
because I find that when I'm reading other people's stuff, I'm so good about like understanding where they're coming from and like, how can I help and what can I do? But with my own stuff, I get caught up in like, oh, she wouldn't talk like that. Shit, I have to correct this. I have to fix this. So, but other than that, it's letting other people read it that I trust.
Jen, what do you do?
I mean, I feel like I suffer. I get so, I do. It's just like, it drives me bonkers, but then I get kind of fixated on it. I don't know, maybe this is toxic, but I feel like I kind of almost have to suffer to a point where I break through it. Where I just, again, a lot of morning, like when I'm stuck, that's when my morning pages become all about, why is this character actually doing this? I don't understand. Like, how do I get from here to there? And I would just keep writing it, and eventually something breaks through. But I feel like there's almost an energy with that, like angst and suffering that works for me.
No, I know.
But
I know what you mean though, because I feel like a friend of mine said, like, this is one time years ago, I was complaining about something, not writing, but he literally just said, when it feels bad enough, you'll change. Ooh. And that's a big part of it. Like, you gotta get to a point where it is so uncomfortable to be where you are that you're like, fuck it, I'll do the new thing. I'll do the untested thing, or I'll be someone else. And that's how I feel with a lot of my writing. It'll just be so uncomfortable to not have it finished, or it'll feel so shitty to not, answer this question that it's like, oh, fuck it, they go to space. And then next thing you know, it's so fun.
Yeah.
Because they went to space.
They went to space.
But I do think, and that is a tip I read recently, in fact, which seems so simple. And it's like, why have I not thought of that? I was reading somewhere, it's like, just come up with a list of 10 things that character could do. Like, just come up with a list of 10 things that could happen next. It doesn't matter how good they are, outlandish as possible, whatever. Just come up with one, like 10, and then pick one of those. And it seems so simple, but it's like, I do think I get stuck sometimes in like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and really anything could happen. That's part of the fun of what this job is. I also do a thing where I pretend I have the character like make a phone call to complain about something. Like, and I try to get into the character's voice doing something banal and dumb that I have to do.
Oh, I like that.
Just to kind of get a sense of, and this is if I'm having character issues, which to me, everything ultimately boils down to having like some kind of an issue with the character breaking up with someone, the character falling, like, and just to kind of get a jolt of like, do I know this person well enough to know what they would do in this kind of random, odd situation that we all encounter? And then I also take a walk. I was having a real issue with the bad guy in this thing that I'm writing, and I took a walk, and it just like 20 minutes into like the walk, I just was like, oh, okay, I think I got it. And it was perfect. But I also think there's a value too here in not ever having, this is something I find with writers who are starting out, they have one project, they have one script that they have devoted their lives to, and everything is writing on that project for them. Like, this is the thing, and that is,
too much pressure.
It's so much pressure.
Yeah.
Because stuff gets rejected all the time.
Oh my God. You need to have such a deep stable, like a deep bench of ideas and projects. I mean, my joke was not even a joke. Whenever I went into a general, I always wanted, like when they say, what else do you have? I always wanted to be able to exhaust them. Like, so I wanted to get to the point where they stopped asking that question.
They're like, please.
Yeah. And I always wanted to have something literally in every genre. So if they say like, oh, we're looking for a space Western or a period drama romance, I'm like, I've got that. So like, I'll come in with like 40 different pitches, at least ideas, just to like have something, which I think is also just good for the brain and not to get too stuck on any one thing.
Yeah, I think that's true too. I was talking to recently, talking to like recent graduates from, my college where they're like, what should I do? And like, what kind of writing? And I was like, write every single thing. You know what I mean? Yes. Because once you get in the business, because I find for me, for instance, I love genre stuff. I love sci-fi. I love drama. But because I am a stand-up, I write comedy, right? Like that choice was kind of made for me. And now I'm trying to figure out, how to kind of branch out where I'm like, oh my God, if I had just had a whole bunch of samples, that kind of showed, and I'm like, but I remember, I know that feeling when you're like, I want to write Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, like when you're 22 and you're like, how do I do that? So then you try to write only like that exact style of comedy. And it's like, Write all of it. Write all of it. Because as you said, right, Jen, speaking this idea of it being kind of divine at times and like, when will God show up? You may think you can do one thing and then you do something else. And it's like, oh shit, that's my jam. You know, that's like where
and
I
the only way to
be.
learn that. Yeah, and the only way to know that is through doing it. That's the only way you ultimately learn what your voice is.
Yeah.
I think I found that I kept getting sent, after the Big Sick, I kept getting sent literal coma movies.
Hollywood is so imaginative. How about another coma movie?
Like, it's tired. Every rom-com, and I that's not a genre I find myself kind of particularly attracted to. I'm like you, I'm a genre fan, and I was so happy to find that out about you, Naomi, because I love that, and I want to be able to like, hey, also Naomi does this, but I do think you're right. If you are, especially if you're a stand-up, everybody just thinks you're gonna just do comedy, and that's all you're gonna be doing. And I just think I see so many people pouring every single thing they have into one resource, perfecting it until it gets to a point where it's like, it's just ones and zeros. You don't even see the words of it anymore. Like, it's not even real. And then if that thing gets rejected, which it most likely will, because everything gets rejected, then you have nothing. And then you feel like nothing. So I think I told Kumail this last week. He was very excited about a thing, and it fell apart. And it's like, don't fall in love with anything. I had a project fall apart 2 weeks ago while I was walking up some stairs, and I fell. And so I like, I'm nursing like a bloody shin, and I'm on the phone like, yeah, okay, stuff happens. I get it. Can I please just get on the phone? But that 2 years ago would have broken me, and it did upset me for like half a day. But it's like, you just got to have a lot of ideas. You have to have a lot of ideas, and you need to love them, but you can't be married to any one thing 100%. You have to love.
Go ahead, Jen. No, you go ahead.
You have to love being a writer. That's ultimately
what you have to love.
You just have to love being a writer, and always, like, I'm always going to write for the rest of my life, no matter what. What I write may, come and go, but I just love that process.
Yeah.
I also hate the process, just to be clear to everyone out there. I also hate it. I often wish I could do something else. It's physically painful. It hurts me. It hurts my relationships. It hurts my body. It hurts my mind. It hurts everything. And it's just, I can't not do it. And you just have to love that, no matter whether you're getting paid or not, whether something you love is being torn apart, whether you're forced to do something that you maybe don't love at first. Like, if you're not committed to that practice as a lifelong practice, it's just going to grind you down.
Well, what was the quote? Who said it? Like, I don't like writing, but I love having written.
Having written, absolutely.
Like that, I realized, like, that's my jam. Like, I literally finished a draft today at 10:30 in the morning. I sent it off, honey. I said, "Oh, I've arrived." That was the only joy I felt. Like, it had been a month and a half of being like, calm suey, if you will, Emily. And then I was like, you know what? No, but then you submit, and then it's like, oh, okay, it's better. Like, now I'm happy with it. But I think what you guys were saying, though, about like not falling in love with an idea, that's tricky, because I think for me, and that I realize is what can sometimes stop me, because I'll start liking an idea, and then either I get these external notes that kind of bum me out, or as I drill down, I go, oh, I don't know. And then when I'm not excited, that's when I don't want to sit down and write. And
I hear you.
No, I gotta stay. I get it. I can't marry everybody, but I gotta have a crush on some of it. Several neighbors.
Keep those crushes. The crushes need to happen. I need to have a crush on every single thing I'm working on. I've just learned to not fully commit, because it's too easy for stuff to fall apart. And then your shins are bloody and you're like, what happened to my life? And I want to get into a little bit kind of what's happening now, because I think that's part of it too. And we're going to get to questions in just a few minutes. But I do think acknowledging, it's really important for me to kind of sit down and acknowledge when I'm having issues, when it's like, oh, I need to do chores. And it's like, okay, sure you do. Like, the dishes were dirty before you started. Like, the dishes will be dirty when you're done. It's really, really easy to find any excuse to keep you from doing your work. But then for me, I find that I have to like sit and acknowledge how miserable I am with whatever part of it I'm working on at that moment. For me, it's like when I get notes and then I start trying to implement those notes, that's a really painful process for me. So I find myself, when I'm sitting down during that point, really going through the thing of like, I've got oh, I said I was going to do something about my car. That's right. What was I was going to, like, I'm like trying to come up with stuff that I need to do because I'm trying to do anything to avoid that. And I think there are always going to be reasons why you can't write, why you shouldn't write, why now's not the right time for you to write. But I think for me, sitting and acknowledging, I don't want to do this because I'm scared, because I'm anxious, because I'm uncomfortable with the notes I got. I'm uncomfortable with getting notes in general. Just acknowledging that and burrowing just a little bit deeper to find out what that is actually about. Could be an imposter syndrome, a terror of having your stuff judged, the terror of like, I don't know what I'm doing. That feeling of like, I have no idea what I'm doing. That need to be perfect, to have everything kind of be perfect and for no one to see you not looking perfect. Of having it suck. I mean, that's what it is. Like ultimately the fear is like, it's gonna suck and it means that I'm not good. That's what it is. Like when you boil everything down, it's always ends up coming up to like, I'm scared this is not gonna be good and people will know I'm not good.
Yep.
Yeah, and then the consequences of that, and then it's over. And I think particularly if you're a writer who does get a professional opportunity, it kind of feels like, oh, I got the winning lotto ticket, and now they're going to rip it up in front of my face if it's not perfect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're going to know. They're going to find out that the investment they made in me was not a good investment. I only have this one shot, and I don't know if it's helpful for people to see that everybody kind of goes through this. I've definitely been through this. I'm not even going to drop the name, but like I one time spoke to someone who had just hosted SNL and I was like, you were great. And the person goes, really messed up on this, a couple of this. And I was like, oh, this never ends. Like when you're doing something creative that can be subjectively judged, it never ends. You'll never 100% feel like I've nailed this.
Is that just true for women though, or for everyone?
This was a man, I'll say. This was a man.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't see that attitude in men as much as I see it in women.
I agree.
I do think that men have a blustery confidence going into things. I think deep down, a lot of them are doing that because they are terrified. Personally, that's what I think.
I believe it. You're a medical professional, so I believe
But I do think, and is that the fear for both of you? Is that what's happening for you when you're...
Oh yeah. I always feel like it's sort of, I always compare it to like that feeling that my skill does not match my dream. Do you know what I mean? Like we're not at the same level, and that's what is so scary, or that's the part that's so hard to grapple with. I may have a big idea, but I may not have the skill to realize that idea. Let alone, as we said, it's like, especially, I mean, in this business, right? Where again, the nature of the business is like, you go into a meeting and like pitch an idea, and then someone will be, if all goes well, they give you money to write it. But I haven't shown you I can write. I just showed you I can talk.
Right?
Oh, that is in my head big time. Yeah.
That first time they see something you've written there, you're always like,
I've duped them up to now, but now,
Exactly. I've tricked them.
I do think I have done. Go ahead. Sorry, Dad.
Oh, just one quick thing that helped me a while ago with this very thing is there was another writer in my same circle who wasn't good. She was objectively like not a good writer, but she put herself out there for everything. Like just submitted, like it was kind of aggressive about it, even like getting her stuff out there and just writing and stuff. And I resented her so fucking much because like I knew I was better, but she was getting the opportunities. And then I finally realized like, so the fuck what? Like not everything has to be good. Like she's putting herself out there. Like stuff doesn't need to be perfect. Like if I want to write, I should just be writing rather than like carefully crafting everything to try and make it perfect. Like if this is what you want to do, fucking be okay with being imperfect. Like if this is what you want to do, then just fucking do it.
That's good advice, because I also feel like too, she had the confidence to put herself out there, like, and even if it's
delusion.
not like she and therefore got more opportunities because she was putting herself out there more and was more like, I don't care, like you should think this is good. You should think this is good, rather than being like, I hope it's good. I hope it's good. Here's the thing I made. Yeah. That's a good lesson too. I feel like when I was a therapist, I was always taught I bring a specific set of skills into that room, and the person sitting across from me brings everything about themselves, all the skills they have, all their coping skills. And that is true with writing too, I think, because I think writers come to the table with skills that can't be taught in school necessarily. Like you can go to school for this, and I actually want to ask both of you what your backgrounds are because I'm quite curious, but you can go to school for this, you can get those skills, but people can give you notes. There are people that have that skills that can work with you to have the love of telling stories. As corny as it may sound, that's what you bring. Like nobody else can bring that to a table other than you. They can bring their notes, they can bring structure and act breaks and blows, they can bring all that stuff, but they can't bring telling a story. The rest of the stuff you can pick up. You absolutely can. But to want to tell a story and to be passionate about it, I don't think you can, you have to kind of want that. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what your backgrounds are, if you, like in school, what you went to school for.
I was a film and English major.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I worked at a magazine. I was like an editor at an art magazine for before. Like I had to get laid off to start to pursue my dream. You know, so that's basically
good. It's a good tactic.
Yeah, my background was in philosophy actually.
And
then I ended up in nonprofit work, but was always writing on the side until an opportunity took off.
Psychology, therapy, was a therapist for years, writing on the side. Yeah. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think I've studied writing since like maybe sophomore year of high school, and then I just I never actually formally. It's just something you love to read, you love to watch film and television, and you're kind of studying everything always when you're watching and learning, and then you just fucking do it.
Because I think there are both ways to approach it. Because I think people who don't have an education in film and writing are like, well, I don't have the education, so I can't do it. And I think it absolutely helps. I can't imagine that it doesn't help. I don't have one. But you also, that can't be your excuse either, because you don't have to have that either.
Right.
Do you feel like your education was useful, Naomi? What a question. Wow.
You know, like I guess in that it forced me to kind of practice that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like just get into it. But at the same time, I study those things because I was already interested, right? Like I gravitated towards them anyway. And so that's why. Emily Best is here.
Hi, Emily.
Emily Best.
Perfect stand-up delivery on that.
Crashing the party. And also, like, this is what it has been like trying to keep up with you. This has been one of the funnest, most stressful things I've ever had to try to bring together. I just have to reflect a few things back to you that I've seen people really react to. My skill doesn't match my dream. Naomi, I love you and hate you for putting words to that thing that I said to my therapist basically this morning. And everybody in the comments was like, it's me. Masturbating with your hand asleep is a metaphor for how to have love yourself.
You know, I'm very educated and very skilled and very professional.
And also invoking the spirits, because Jen, my dad is watching, and he also lights candles and writes in his journal in the mornings. And I loved that the way that you put that it's like, it's spiritual, it's witchy, which is very delightful always. Anytime we can invoke the witches, hooray. But these are the things that like people have, and then of course, when it feels bad enough, you'll change. Like these are the things that people have kind of glommed on. There are so many incredible questions. It's actually one of the places that I wanted to start because of where people were really reacting is how do you keep the faith in yourself? Most particularly now when I don't even know how to talk about it. Like, can I just do this? Does that count? I'm not a writer. So
you mean the world?
This is what I have.
I mean the world. This is the world.
Thank you. This is the world. Yes.
I think when I'm having a particularly bad, and actually when you were posting about this exact thing, you put a quote by me on Instagram, and I thought, when did I say that? That's very smart.
Me too.
I knew Jen's because that's like your pen tweet. It used to be. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I Googled that quote, and I found some stuff I had written on Huffington Post 10 years ago. And I thought it was a beautiful thing to go back and go, wow, I I've written some good stuff. And to like, not even me saying that now kind of feels a little embarrassing, but I'm to go back and take stock of your accomplishments when you are losing faith in yourself, I think somewhat. I also, on occasion, if I know someone I'm working with very well and we've gotten quite comfortable with each other, I will sometimes be like, hey, can you just reassure me that like, I'm okay? I'm okay. Because I don't mind anymore. And I do this with my husband as well. I don't mind asking for what I need, what I'm requiring emotionally. It doesn't feel any less real to me to ask for it. So I think sometimes when I'm losing the faith, I look to others who have had faith in me and say, and ask them, can you just reassure me? I literally just need a pep talk in this moment. And that works. So those are the two things. I look at my past accomplishments and I check in with people who do believe in me.
Jen, what do you do? It looked like you were looking around your apartment for the answer.
For me, I have to make it not about me, because when it's about me, like I just have too many issues around that. So like most of the projects that I'm working on are all about centering people who are normally relegated to the margins. And I just feel like I have an opportunity to do that. And so I owe it to them to keep going forward, to show up on the page, to advocate for them, and to make to use my power and privilege in some small way to make things a little bit better. So when I'm trapped in my own shit, that's what enables me to get out of the way. It's like, bitch, it's not about you. Like this person doesn't get to have their story told. Like you have the opportunity to tell their story or to help get this kind of story in front of people. So it's bigger than you. Just fucking do it.
Yeah.
But then also being friends with other writers. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've called Emily like in despair. So like it's a huge help. What about you, Emily?
Oh, I don't really have one. I said you could go to the next one, Emily.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I don't have one. I'm like at best, I kind of say to myself, because lately it's like, I realize I don't not want other people to have, but I get jealous, meaning like I want that too, you know? And I realize that one of the things I try to say to myself when I get crazy or get that feeling of like, I'm not good or it'll never happen. And I just go, why not me? Why not me? It's not the most ringing endorsement, but sometimes I can't really be like, you're amazing, but I can just say, why not me? Shit happens to people all the time.
People way dumber than us. People way less talented than us. People.
This is not a meritocracy, which is very frustrating, but it is a very fact. So if it's not a meritocracy, it also goes back to not needing to be perfect. So it is like, it's like, hey, someone's got to get it. They got to write somebody a check. Maybe they'll write me one. And it's like, that's it.
I remember there was a...
No, I was just going to say, this is the first time in ever that I have heard panelists willingly say, it's not important to have faith in yourself all the time. It's important to actually have another way of getting around that. And that's really important, because it's important to be able to say to yourself, even on the days I feel like I don't have faith in myself, I could still write. I've never heard anybody say that before. I just want to underline that for the crowd, because I can see it coming up in the comments. I know you guys aren't watching.
I just want to mention something else real quick. For any project that I'm working on, I try to have it, for me, it needs to answer a question that I kind of am thinking about in some regard, whether or not it's like, what happens when dogs fart? I don't know, whatever it is. But so when I am feeling kind of like a loss of faith, I always this is the one for a project I'm working on now, which is what happens when two people really know each other. And when I lose faith in if I'm able to do something, I check back in with, if I need to know the answer to this question, other people, and it's similar to what Jen is saying, other people will need to know the answer to this question too. Other people are thinking about this too. I'm not going to answer this question for them, but I like the idea that stuff that I'm struggling with is stuff that other people are struggling with. And I think ultimately what any of us are doing is trying to show other people us so they can go, oh, me too. That's really all any of this is. Yeah.
How much do you rely, I mean, Jen, you've talked a little bit about calling Emily, but how much do you rely on a community, and do you structure that? Do you have writers groups? Do you have regular calls? Do you have accountability? How do you do that?
That's a great idea. People.
emailed Naomi a little while ago when I was struggling with something that she and I were going through similar things that I found out, because I think we have the same manager, don't we?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. And so I kind of was like, oh, okay, that's someone. And same thing with Jen. Like and it's been recent for me that I check in with people, because it is such a lonely business for so much of the time that it helps me feel less like I am alone and just in an island in the middle of the ocean somewhere. But I've not ever done writers groups. I've never done the accountability thing, which it does all sound great.
Yeah, exactly. I've never done any of it either, but I mean, I think for writers, you do end up having writer friends, and a lot of my friends are writers, and to just using that, it just becomes part of our everyday lives. Yeah.
I love that. I want to get into the actual making and craft of things. There are some specific questions that I think are really valuable. How do you've all worked in TV in different capacities, and how do you work on tying up multiple, when you have a lot of threads, and this could also sort of apply to like managing a lot of projects, but when you have a lot of threads in a story, do you have processes for tying them all together?
I think when I'm doing anything for a movie, when I wrote an ensemble a while ago, which was my first time doing that. It's very difficult. And everybody gets a different color note card. And so I have to make sure, and I also have one of like everyone together is its own color. And I have to make sure I'm following each person's story. And anytime you have a draft of anything, I try to go back and read it through that character's perspective only. Because that's the only way. Pretend they're the lead in some other thing. Like they're just not the lead in this thing, but they are the lead in another thing. And that doesn't mean you cram a massive story in, but it just all of their decisions need to make sense. It's also great. The way our lives work, we all affect each other. And I think sometimes when we're writing, it's like a thing will happen, and then a separate thing will happen to a different person. And then another, like two people will talk, but then they go on and do things that are unrelated to that talk. Everything we do affects each other. So two people talk, one person spills a coffee on another person's dress. That person then goes to a job interview, but they have a dirty dress, so they don't get the job. Like our lives are messy and complicated. And I think we forget that when we're writing sometimes, because it's hard to build. So I try to build in things like that, ways that people can complicate each other's lives. And then note cards, colors, just colors.
Yeah, the color note cards are the best. And also just like if you're doing a season of a show, for instance, I know I tend to kind of chart out, like if I were to say, let's say I have 10 episodes and I have 6 characters, that are like important. I just will literally say like, okay, if I know what this character's journey is, break it up into 10 pieces or maybe 8, right? Like it may not be about them every episode, but just making sure there's at least one move per episode per person. And by move, I mean like a choice they make and an action they take, and then just spread that out.
That makes a lot of sense. I think there's another question about the practical. Let's talk about like really the practicality of writing. I think a lot of folks are in that shift to wanting to become fully professional. Can you talk a little bit? You talked about your backgrounds, like how you got started, but like, can you talk a little bit about the shift into professionalism? And Jen, there was a specific question for you, which is like, how do you feel like producing your own work affected your on-ramp to your career?
I mean, that was
it created it.
Yeah, exactly. I was completely outside the industry, and then I wrote and starred and produced something along with a bunch of friends, and it was successful enough that opened some doors for me. So that absolutely was the only on-ramp, and I would unequivocally recommend that to everybody, just to make your own shit. Because also the barrier to entry is lower, but also the stakes are lower when you're doing your own stuff. Like the thought of like automatically just starting like on a big show on a network, I mean, that would be so terrifying. But if you're doing your own shit on YouTube, it's a great way to fail and to learn and to grow and like figure shit out. And also because you have to kind of do everything when you're producing your own shit. So you get to learn a bit from all the different facets of a production, which informs everything. Like my being an actor is a huge part of, like, informs my writing deeply, and vice versa. Like those two things are just so inextricable. They inform each other constantly.
Do you feel that way too, Naomi? Because I know you do both.
Yeah, and I think it does. I think I've been thinking about lately too, though. I've been finding that the acting side of me it might be messing me up a little bit with writing, because I realize when I write, I very much write with the performance of the words in mind, not mine.
But that's a good thing.
But then I'm wondering then, like, I think I'm thinking about it more for jokes, where I'm like, that may not be a hard joke in writing, but I know if the person said it this way, it would be funny. But then when like a remember who's reading the shit, Jen.
Right.
You know what I mean? Somebody who's like, I'm reading this at red lights in my car, and I don't actually like humor.
On a toilet if you're lucky.
This is something that drives me nuts about the industry, because I am simultaneously writing the script for the audience who's going to watch the show, but also the executive who's going to scan through and decide whether or not an audience ever gets to see the show. And I have to write for both of those audiences simultaneously.
Yes. I think that's the impossible part, where I'm like, oh, I like this, but I realize I need to write for literally 4 different entities before it even gets to, you know, that. And I think that's the tricky part. It's writing for both of those people at once.
Yeah.
I will say real quick, I had experience of like having a full-time job and being a freelance writer for like websites and stuff, which was how I kind of transitioned. And it just meant that I was wasting a lot of my time at work writing. Like I was a bad employee. Like I was just a bad employee for a little while. And then I was very lucky that my husband finally got a job and I was able to not be the sole breadwinner. But it was definitely a struggle, and it was not fun. It was not a fun struggle. I completely empathize with anyone who has a full-time job and wants to break into this professionally. I lost a lot of sleep. I didn't go out a lot, or I went out too much. And I was not a great employee. By that point, I wasn't seeing clients anymore, which was great. I would have been not good for that.
Well, no, I agree. I did the same thing. Go, Jen.
No, you go ahead.
No, it's not that good.
If there's a standoff, I have to ask a different question. So
okay, go.
Ask a different question. Yeah, new question.
So this is something that I hear coming up a lot, and I'm very curious to hear how different people answer it. Christine Freshy asks, there's a fine line between writing characters who aren't like you and writing stories that probably aren't yours to tell. Any advice on navigating that line? And not like, Jen, if you give a shoulder shake, you're going first.
Oh, no.
I love this topic. I love this topic because I think for so long we've had this sense that like straight white dudes can write any story and everyone else can only write their story. Yep. And then we've been kind of like checking against that, but also it can go too far into thinking you can only write your own story. And I had a big moment a while ago. I was writing a feature, and several of the characters were Black women. And I had this like real moment of like, is it okay for me to write Black women? And my best friend at the time was a Black woman. She's like, yes, like if you have an opportunity, like as a white person to tell a story that's actually informed because you're in relationship with Black people. It's not going to be just like someone who doesn't know anything.
You're
it's just
picking it out of the air. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to, something I said a long time ago, and I stand by it, that is that you can't write diversity. All you can do is live diversely and then write authentically. Like it has to be authentic, but if you don't have a diverse experience, then the authenticity won't be there. But you can't manufacture it. So you really have to seek out relationships with people who are different than you and read lots of things that are different from you and like learn different perspectives. Because I don't want to, like, I want transness to be part of every story I write because that's a huge part of my life. But I also want anything I write to include the kind of great diversity of perspectives and identities and narratives that are all around me. And so I have to like seek that out in order for it to be authentic on the page.
And also the pressure, I think to me, because I find too, the thing I lately, and especially, now with our cultural moment where, Black is the new Black and people are really like, okay, can you write me something about some Black people doing Black stuff? And that comes with its own pressure, right? To feel like I now have to represent the race and the culture. And I just
do it right. Make sure you do it right.
Do it right. So I think that's the other thing too, where it's like, I don't always think that every Black story is my story to tell either. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's, and so I think what you were just saying too, like, I want trans to be part of everything. Like I want there to be Black people in every story I tell, but it doesn't have to be like 5 Black people in inner city Chicago blacking it up at a chicken joint, like where it's whatever, in order for those stories to be told or those people to be multidimensional.
Every single trans story in Hollywood comes by my desk. Like I'm
really?
Approached as a
I get
consultant or a writer.
Trans, yeah.
Every time.
Wow.
And half of them just aren't, like, they're not my stories. Like the transes is a very broad experience. And like one came across my desk today. I'm like, I don't know anything about this world. Like, yeah, the characters are trans, but like, this is a world I don't know at all. It's not right for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think overall, if you are using slang in your dialogue to be like, this is how I'll show that this is this kind of, then that's a no. Do you know what I mean? Like that, I think people try to do shortcuts to be like, oh, I'm going to put some non-white people in this and I'm going to have them using slang and then I'm good. I did it. That is not the same thing as realizing a character, understanding a character. I also think it's okay to check in with people, to talk with people. That means you have to know people. That's a whole other thing that aren't white.
Well, that's the problem.
That's a whole other thing.
Know people.
You have to know people. I also think I've been on projects where cultural consultants have been brought in and paid and given credit. I think that's incredibly important because those people are sometimes they aren't, but sometimes they're writers who are looking to make steps and make moves too. So that can help them along the way as well as making your project better. You don't do it because it's the right thing to do. You do it because it makes the project better. Like
that is such a huge thing. Yeah.
So I'm torn between doing the responsible thing, which is telling everybody that it's 2:01, and doing the thing I really want to do, which is just like cracking open a beer and doing this for the rest of the day. Because this has been one of my favorite things I have ever watched or been a part of. There are a ton more questions, obviously, so we might check back in with you at some point. Emily, thank you so much for gathering this incredible coven. And Naomi, this has just been amazing. I am just, if I can have my small moment to be like, I'm just such a huge fan of your work and I'm really excited that you would be here. And I'm like honored that anything that I ever made touched anything that you ever made. And this is amazing. I just like have that moment for a second. I really appreciate it.
And I just want to say, first off, thank you ladies for joining me on this. Seed&Spark, for those of you who are watching, if you are not aware, I am on the Creator Action Board. Their whole thing, and you're probably going to do a thing, Emily, but I'm going to do it also. Their whole thing is empowering creators with crowdfunding, with community, with access. I think the thing that really attracted me to this organization is I didn't come from an entertainment background in any regard. I am from a country town in North Carolina. It's important to me to demystify this process for other people because I think there is so much like cloaked, like people mentioning producers' names from the 80s and 90s and being like, remember we used to sit around. It doesn't have to be like that. That part is changing. I want to be part of changing it. I think these women here want to be part of changing it. And I want to take it off its pedestal. It's an amazing business. It makes magic. It's not magic. So that's support Seed&Spark, support what these ladies do. That's all.
Thank you. And I will tell everyone the way that we are able to provide these for free is we will post a little pay what you can link, which is to say, if this was valuable to you and you have resources to contribute, we would greatly appreciate your ability to continuing to make these for free. If you're in a place where you do not have resources, please don't think a second about needing to contribute. Your presence here and your investment in yourself is also enough. So we really appreciate that. And we can't wait for we have several that are upcoming. We have a lunch and learn next week on polishing your pitch videos without breaking the bank, and also another creative sustainability session where Mark Duplass talks also about the creative writing process. If you want to even deepen the work there and get into the his super indie way of going about things. These wonderful women, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
We're going to make like 10 different t-shirts based just on stuff that we've done. So we started a business. Sorry, you're co-owners, and I'll send you residual checks.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Everybody. Bye.
Bye.